Hey there guys, today's video is going to be week 2 of my series where I am hand raising a pair of green-cheeked conures. So if you didn't see the first video, you probably want to go ahead and click up there to go visit that first, but this is going to be an update, so you'll see how much the birds have grown, what's changed in their care, because when you're raising baby birds, everything is going to be changing on a week-by-week and even a day-by-day basis. So if that's something you guys are interested in seeing, or if you just want to see adorable baby green-cheeked conures, you want to stick around because that's going to be coming up right after this. Alright guys, so it is week 2 of raising my baby green-cheeked conures, and they have gotten a lot larger. Now a lot of the parts of this hand feeding are going to be the same as last week. One of them, this is the first feeding that I am doing of the morning. I was not entirely awake, so I did forget the extra cup that I used for the warm water, just to be able to clean up the baby. So the first thing I'm going to do, like always, I'm going to go ahead, mix up that formula, because again, I'm using really warm water, probably in the neighborhood of about 180 degrees. I want that to have the opportunity to come down to the 105 degrees that I want it to be while feeding, but using the warmer water does help it to dissolve a little bit better. So I do want to go ahead and do that. So you can see I just use the syringe, work really hard to break up any of those lumps that might form. If it is a little thick, I'm going to add a little more water. Now the formula is going to tell you how much water to add, usually as a ratio of the powdered formula mix to the water. And there is going to be a variation on week to week, day to day. Usually the older your birds get, the thicker that formula is going to be. It's usually easiest if you start with it a little too thick. You can always add more water. If you end up thinning it out a little too much, it's a lot harder, because then you have to add more formula. You have to wait for that to fully dissolve, because the amount of water it's going to absorb isn't going to happen right away. So you're not going to know if you did it perfectly the right way. So I would say just start with a little less water than you think you need, and you can always thin it out. I'm also setting aside some of that water to clean up the babies so that it can start cooling in that ceramic cup. Again, I use the ceramic cups so that they are able to absorb some of that heat a little bit easier. Now the first thing we're going to do, we're going to weigh the babies, and I'm going to let you guys know right now that this part was entirely staged for the purpose of the video. I know it's important to let you guys know that weighing the babies does need to happen every single day, just so you know exactly how much to feed. You want to make sure that you know they're growing, but how much you feed per feeding is going to be a percentage of their body weight. Usually you want to aim for about 10 to 15% of their body weight. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and weigh those babies. And you can see as I pulled one of them out, he threw a stick at me, so I had to go ahead and throw that away. Now by doing this this way, you guys didn't get to see me fighting with the scale, because I did have the same issues that I did last week. The scale would time out because it didn't have enough weight on it for long enough. Every time it timed out, it would switch back over to pounds and ounces, and I want to weigh my baby birds in grams, because that's going to make it really easy to measure up how much food they are getting. So again, I'm just going to double check the formula. You pretty much do it like cake batter. You know, you want to make sure you don't have any lumps, so you want to break up any lumps that happen inside the formula. You want to go ahead and scrape down the sides to make sure that it's just all thoroughly incorporated. Now the baby birds did grow quite a bit in the last week. That first chick, which you'll remember was a little over 30 grams last week, he was 63 grams as of this feeding. And that second chick, which was 13 grams as of last week, was a little over 30 grams as of this feeding, 36 grams total. So that's quite a bit of growth that happened just over 1 week. Now you guys can see again, I'm prepping paper towels, I'm getting them ready. You are going to go through a ton of paper towels. In fact, I am doing one of the bravest things you can do while hand feeding a baby bird, and that is wearing a light colored shirt, because these guys can be very, very messy. Even as they get older, they know what's going on with the hand feeding. They get very, very excited. So you can see with this first chick, we have reached the age where, that wing is flapping and going crazy. He is giving a very enthusiastic feeding response, which is wonderful to see. That energy, that is a healthy, well-fed baby bird that is growing very, very nicely. But it does make it a little harder to get the food into the bird. So I am using a 3cc syringe. Since this bird was right around 60 grams, if I use, grams, I can know how much to feed in cc's. So I'm going to aim for at least 6 grams. So that's going to be 2 full syringes. But I know 15% would be 3 full syringes, or 9 grams. So I did 2 syringes, and then you guys can see that I did part of one. I needed to measure it out. And first thing in the morning before coffee, that was a little bit tricky to do, but this guy got a little over 7.5 grams for this feeding, or rather 7.5 cc's for this feeding, which is roughly going to translate to about 7.5 grams. That's sort of the magical thing of the metric system, that a cubic centimeter and a milliliter and a gram work together so beautifully. So again, you can see we're cleaning up the baby. Part of the cleaning is, from the feeding, when the bird goes to the bathroom. But also, I have a bird that is with another bird. So that means, sometimes your sibling will poop on your back. So that will need to be cleaned up as well. And this one, you can see there was so much mess that I actually needed to wipe down my hands. And then I am going to get out a fresh paper towel to clean up the other baby. So you can see I'm using that smaller bowl just as a holding pen. These birds have reached the age where they are getting a little more active. So between the last feeding and this feeding, they had actually managed to completely move their paper towels. They had pooped all over the bowl. So I currently have that bowl in the dishwasher. Now you want to remember with baby birds, if they do go to the bathroom, you want to make sure you clean that up right away, and that's going to be for a couple of different reasons. One, you want to make sure that everything is clean and hygienic. That's going to be one of the ways that your birds can get very sick if things are not very clean and very hygienic. It's an easy thing to control, so again, just try to keep everything as clean as possible. But the other reason you want to clean everything up as quickly as possible is that bird poop is going to dry incredibly hard, incredibly tough. So if you don't get it cleaned up right away, it will be harder to clean up at a later date. So again, an additional paper towel to clean up the babies, especially when you're getting a really good feeding response. You can see just how full that crop is. One of the spaces you want to make sure you clean is under the crop. It might be a little bit hard to see, but especially when that crop is nice and full, it does create a crease where they can hold excess formula they have dropped. They can pick up their droppings as they're moving around. So you just want to make sure that that is nice and clean. Now, one of the things I'm having to do, since I have one of their bowls in the dishwasher, is I'm having to just hand wash the bowl that they were in first. So that's part of why I always tell you guys that it's very, very helpful if you have more than one set of tools. Whatever you think you're going to need to raise your babies, get one more of everything. So now I went ahead, that bowl is nice and cleaned out, dried it out. So again, I'm going to line it with paper towels because these guys are still making quite a bit of mess. And I just prefer the paper towels because they're very, very easy to keep nice and clean. Now, a lot of people will use pine shavings, and there are some benefits that you get from pine shavings, but they're just a little bit harder to keep clean. I'll usually move to pine shavings after the birds get a little bit older. Now, one thing I'm doing here, since the birds are starting to move around, I am using disposable chopsticks. I will put those inside the nesting bowl so the birds have something to grab onto with their feet. I don't want their legs to splay out. I want them to have good action with their feet. So I just break up the chopsticks, and then you can see I run my thumb over the ends to just make sure there are no sharp points. Um, and yes, I have given myself splinters that way, but I would much rather me get the splinters than the baby birds get the splinters. Uh, the disposable chopsticks are bamboo, so they are something it is safe for the baby birds to get. They are incredibly cheap, and they are sterilized and cleaned to be used for human consumption. So I'm very, very comfortable with them, and they are going to get thrown out every feeding, which means I am going to go through quite a few of them. But again, they're incredibly cheap. I did the math, and I think the package that I bought, I end up spending about 1.3 cents per feeding that I do for these birds. So you can see they're getting nice and big. They've grown immensely just in the last week. They are still very, very much babies though, so we will be doing this for quite a while. So if you guys have not yet subscribed to the channel, you want to make sure you do that because this will be an ongoing series. If you like this video, if you want to know more about how baby birds are raised, you can go ahead, give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment letting me know if there's anything else you guys would like to see. And I do want to thank you guys, as always, so much for tuning in and watching these videos, and I hope to see you guys next time. Thanks. I do need to say thank you to my Patreon patrons for helping to make these videos possible. You can find out more by visiting Hi Red Bird on Patreon or clicking the link in the description section down below if you would like more information. Thanks!